In this tutorial, we are going to go through Autoshot's new timeline processing functions. We can now name shots in your nonlinear editor via timeline markers, and we can then export an OpenTimelineIO, in this case from Resolve, but Avid now has this as well. Now we can actually batch process large numbers of shots at a time, and we can include automatic slap comp creation, automatic set linking, library overrides. We'll go through defining a shot structure, and be able to process dozens of shots in a short period of time. We are going to be working with the shots that we did with the ETC Pathways project. Make sure to check that out. I'll put that in a link below. It's a great project showing the future of blending traditional production with AI-assisted background work. So let's get started.
So as we come into our timeline, you can see there's the camera original file name there. We're going to set the playhead at the beginning of the clip and click Add Marker. Now we're going to enter the shot name into the name or into the notes category of the marker. In this case, it's going to be the PTH prefix followed by the sequence number, followed by the shot number. So we use the first three tokens in the notes to name the shot. The ones after that are ignored. In this case, we're going to add a couple things that are useful for information, but those will not be used for the shot naming. Okay, and then once we have done that, we also need to add in the clip name into the actual marker name. So in this case, we are copying the cam original file name, B004, etc., C018, into the name of the marker. And this is what will let us correlate the file name of the actual cam original to that particular shot name. Here we're going to go through and export an OpenTimelineIO file. We'll just highlight the timeline we want to export, and then come down and click OpenTimelineIO, OTIO. Great. And then we can actually export an OTIO file, and then we can read that file into Autoshot.
And in Autoshot, in this particular case, we are going to be parsing multiple directories, since frequently a shot will have multiple days of takes, so we'll show you how to go through and do that. We want to start off with a clean slate, so we are going to go up to Shots and Clear, and we'll just go project wide. Okay, it's going to clear up all of our existing shots. Okay, great. So I'll clear that out. Next, we're going to want to scan all the different Cine source directories by day. We have 2 days in this shoot, so we're going to look at 418, and we're going to browse and pick our pathways, and here's our first day of shooting, 418, and there's the media directory. And again, we can search under these directories, like these are all the subdirectories for the camera originals that were on this, but we're going to pick the top level directory so it can scan underneath that. And we're going to click scan, and we're going to go by day, because we just want to scan that day's takes and ignore our cache just to make sure we're going from a clean slate. You click scan, and you can see how quickly it's going through. In this case, we're doing timecode based matching between the Jetset takes and the camera originals. We had a technical sync connected to both the Jetset iPhone and to the Cine camera we were using on the shoot, so the timecode matches, and it makes for very rapid matching between the Jetset takes and the Cine camera takes. Okay, so we found all the matches there. Let's go to day 419. Again, we're going to go up and browse, and let's go pathways 419, pick our media folder. Again, we're going to scan, and again, pick the day, and let's ignore our cache. There we go. And it's going to go through and scan all those files and look for timecode correlations and matches. And now it's going through and matching them to all the corresponding Jetset takes. And again, this is a lot quicker than having it do the optical scan of the flashing marker codes. They can both work, just that the timecode based matching is really fast. Okay, once we have that, we're going to import our OpenTimelineIO. We're going to go to Shots and import from OpenTimelineIO. We're going to browse and pick our OTIO file. In this case, in Timelines, I'm going to pick this Pathways OpenTimelineIO. And a couple things we want to be careful of. We want to actually go for project wide in our import. And we want to add a 10-frame header, a 10-frame handle to each side of the imported shot. And this is very commonly done in visual effects to give each shot a few extra frames on the beginning and the end. So we're going to add the handles, and we're going to click import. Okay, so now we are going through. It's loading 86 shots worth of information, and now it's going through and it's creating these shots. So it goes through and finds the takes information for each shot that we need to know, and creates the shot in Autoshot, and updates the user interface. And see here, now we can actually see that if we go to a take that has an associated shot, I think scene 1, take 5 has an associated shot. Yeah, there we go. We can see that the shot appears, and some of them have multiple shots. In this particular case, we have pathways 001, 020, so sequence 1 and shot 20. And as we go through some of the others, not every take has a shot. They didn't use every take. But the ones that do have that, again, scene 1, take 5. There we go. There's our shot name. Okay, so now that we have the shots, we don't actually want to go through those one by one. So we have a new feature that lets us process these shots in batch and also make slap comps and copy these shots into a visual effects friendly folder structure, and that is called Quick Render. So we're going to bring this up. And in Quick Render, it's going to default to a view where it just shows the individual shot from that take. And let's actually go take a look at the project view so we can see all the shots in the project. So we can see a whole ton of shots here. And this is the list of shots that were in that project from beginning to end. And if you're trying to import these into Shotgun, it turns out that we also create a Shotgun folder from this. If you go down to our timelines, then we have actually created a shotgun.csv file that you can load into Shotgun. We're not going to be doing this at this point, but I'll just for reference. So here's our entire list of the Jetset shots in that we're going to process. And for each one, it shows you, for say pathways 01, 020, it shows you which day it was shot on and the take, and it shows you which USDZ file was used. In this case, the library no front wall. And that is important information because we want to configure one of the early shots in this sequence the way we want the rest of them to be processed. And shot 010, I actually know from experience, we can't see very much in the shot. We'll actually start with 01, 020. And let's actually just go with the take. All right, in 1020, we're going to want to pick the day, the 18th, and the scene 1, take 05, which is actually the one we already picked. But in case you have to look around for which one it is, this is how you find it. Okay, so scene 1, take 05. So let's close that for now. And we want to configure all these pieces so that when we do the batch processing, it's correct. So we're going to pick the scene blend file. And in this case, for the library, because as we can see, our library for no front wall, we actually want the library blender file we're going to use. In this case, the library pathway is final. So we're going to pick that. Then it will automatically match the scene locator that we used in the shot, the scene loc center, to the scene locator in the pathways file. Okay, and we're going to want to link scenes in this case. And we're doing this for a very specific reason, because that library final file is actually quite large. And if we just copy the contents into each individual shot file, that'd be a huge waste of space, and we wouldn't have a way of updating the top-level library file. We're actually going to link the scene, and that means, number one, that our individual Blender shot files will be quite small because they're linking most of the data, and two, that when you update the library's pathways final Blender file, all those changes will automatically ripple through into your individual shots. And this is a real key piece of production. You want to link your top-level scenes into your shot files so you can easily update these things. We'll leave this as extracted EXRs in the original format. For the gamma and color LUT, this was shot in Apple log. So we're going to set our gamma and color LUT to Apple, and we're going to want to bring these, as always, to ACES CG EXRs. We're not going to be using an AI roto model on these, so we won't worry about that. We do actually, in these, want to set our depth. By default, our camera image plane is set using the onset LiDAR. That can result in a camera image plane that can move back and forth quite a bit. And since these shots frequently are intersecting with the live action scenery, it's easier to just set the depth to just a meter distance for all of them, and then we can adjust from there. Okay, so once we've got the basic setup for this initial shot, we can actually go up to Shots, Quick Render, and let's try processing it. So we'll just pick our take. We are going to tell it to copy to the results folder. In this case, I'll show you where that's at. I've created a new folder called Shots. We'll pick that folder. And we can also configure how we are going to create our shot folder structure here in settings. And here you can see how it's going to be naming this and what the hierarchy of files this is going to be. And this can change from production to production. In this particular case, you can see our shot name, and we can see that we're going to put in our Blender file into the 3D subdirectory under Blender files, and then our render output will go under the Blender render. Likewise, our camera shot is going to go into editorial plate. The proxy will be an editorial proxy. The port render will go into Blender render slap. And so we'll be making slap comps there. And then we're going to be generating a set of sRGB proxies for use in Blender, and this is where those will go. So again, you can configure these for your own project. This is fine for what we're doing now. All right, let's go ahead and let's try rendering this. We're just going to click Run, and it's going to go through the process and extract the files from the original Apple log files and generate both the EXR file sequence and also generate our proxy JPEG sRGB sequence for use in Blender. And it'll go through that reasonably quickly. And here it's going to actually start rendering. You can see it's going through rendering all the Blender frames. Once it's created the Blender file, it is actually automatically batch rendering the slap comp using the image on the internal image plane and a built-in keyer we have in Blender. Okay, so it's created a Blender render file, and if you just start selecting one file as we did, it'll pop up in the Blender file automatically. And in this case, we can actually see that we're mostly occluded here. You can actually very quickly check to see how the file is coming out. If you look in here's our shots directory, and then we're going to look at pathways 01, 020. And we can look at our Blender render, and there's our slap comp as we saw before. And then we can double click our slap comp and take a quick look. And you can see our 3D bookshelf is intersecting, and also we can see that our key isn't quite right. So the bookshelf we'll handle in a slightly later area when we do library overrides. But let's fix the key because we're going to be setting this keyer color for the next 20 shots. So we want to get that about right. So we'll exit from here, and I'm going to exit from here right now as well. Okay, so let's go down to our created proxy. We can see that the directory has all of the sRGB JPEGs that we created for this, which is what Blender will read as an image sequence for its internal rendering. And we can also see that we added those together into an MP4 file. So you can double click that. This is just the live action version, the proxy live action version of the shot. So you can actually see what's going to be in the shot. Okay, as we're moving, great. So we set the keyer and it was too light, so it's a little bit darker here and here. So we're going to do a color pick of the keyer that's considerably darker. So I'm going to look down here to see if there's any much darker spots in the scene. And down here is actually a little bit darker. Okay, so I'm going to move that over here. I'm going to briefly move my Autoshot window back out of the way. And so we're actually going to pick our color here. So let's go ahead and under our keyer settings, let's do pick from screen. And we're going to come over here and we're going to pick this darker area. There we go. In our keyer color. I'm going to click OK. And let's go through and process that. I'm going to just run the same thing again. I'll exit out of this piece of it. And it's just going to do the same thing we did before. And it's going to go through and just render the entire slap comp, but now with our updated keyer settings. Okay, and again, instead of looking at the Blender file, let us look at our slap comp under 3D. And we're still getting a little bit of a dirty key, but better than it was. Okay, that's better. And we can do some more per shot cleanups if we want to do that. But let's go ahead and start the batch processing. We're going to come back to here, and instead of going from our take level, we're going to pick same USDZ. And because we've set up our configuration to have our library, we want to have all the same USDZ files that use the library no front wall USDZ from the same library pathways project. So we actually want to process all those at the same time. And so by picking the same USDZ, now we're loading all those from pathway series 1, shot 10, all the way down to series 6, shot 10. And again, we're going to use the same pieces here. So we're just going to click run. And we can see we're going to start processing a lot of shots. And it's going to start off with the very first shot, and it's going to do all the extractions. It's going to basically do all the pieces we did for the shot that we just processed, except now it's going to process all those shots and generate all those Blender files and all those slap comps. And then we can go through those and do any fixes that we need to do on a per shot basis. Okay, so we can see that it's finished processing a few shots, so let's go take a look at the first 4 shots in the pipeline. I'm going to come over here. And here's our shots. Here's pathways 01, and let's look at our slap comp. And it looks like the camera is behind the CG here, so we're gonna probably have to look at that. Let's take a look at our path 2. Again, we're gonna look at the slap comp, and this is just a great way we can go very quickly to see things that we're gonna need to fix in these. There's our shot. We're gonna need to fix how the intersection of the live action and CG works, because we have CG bleeding through the live action, and we'll do some keyer fixing. All right, that's fine, but the basic shot looks like it's working. And let's go back through pathways 30. And once again, we're just gonna look at our slap comp. And sometimes you get lucky and all your slap comps just work. Other times we're gonna have to go through and correct a bunch of these things. So here you're gonna have to fix the gear and fix a couple other things. All right, that's fine. Let's go back to the first one, and let's just start going through and showing how to fix stuff. We'll just close this. And it has created our 3D files and our Blender files. It has created a Blender shot file, which is named after the the same shot that we set up back up in the nonlinear editor. Pathways sequence 1, shot 10. So let's go ahead and open that up, and we're working with Blender 4.4. Okay, so we can play through our timeline, and clearly the camera, we'll just swing around our camera. Let's go highlight our image plane. Our image plane is clearly in in the middle of the bookshelf. All right, that's fine. So we're gonna want to move a couple of objects in the way, and we're going to start seeing how we do that. And here we can see how our scene is set up. It has linked to all of the collections that were in our original library file. And these show up as linked sections over here. You can see it by the little link file, the little link icon over here. These are collection instances that we may actually move to straight linked collections. So this may look slightly different, but the key item here is that you can see the link icon, and that tells you that it is a linked collection. So let's take a look at the one we're going to have to hide. If we just highlight the bookshelf and hit hide, then all the bookshelves go away. That's not what we want. Let's unhide those. And what we actually want to do is only hide a section of that bookshelf. How do we do that? Since it's a linked collection, we're going to actually click on this and our bookshelves and right click on that, and we're going to do a library override. We're going to create that selected library override. And now all of a sudden we can actually pick individual objects in that bookshelf. So we can pick, and actually it turns out the books are going to be something else that we have to do this with. So we're going to right click on the books, and we'll do a library override, and we'll make selected. And then now we can select individual items of books, and we can hide them. Right? Let's go through, and here's our camera frustum, so we can get a good idea of the things that are in the way. Hide this, and I think we still have to hide part of the general structure. Okay, right click, library override, make selected, and then we can hide that wall, and the rest of the wall is still there. Now our camera has a clear field of view. Let's hide this little fellow as well. Okay, and now we can actually look directly at our camera. This area over here was actually in the original frame. It's supposed to be looking at an object from inside a bookshelf, but we just want to use the real bookshelf that was in the actual shot. So there we go. So we can actually see our shot come together. All right, let's go ahead and save our file. Then we can actually go hit N, and we're going to go to Autoshot, and let's actually do a fast viewport render. So before we do that, let's take a look at our Blender render file. By default, the output is set to a directory just below the current Blender file directory called Blender render, and it will generate a Blender render file as an EXR. And we don't actually want to make EXRs for our fast slap comp. That's excessive. Fortunately, when we click fast viewport video, we can see this shows up, and it has changed this to Blender render now into the slap comp directory, and it is making a slap comp and directly routing it to the MP4 file format, which is exactly what we want for a slap comp. So it's going through the process of rendering all that. All right, so that's done. And let's go and look at our finished slap comp. So we're going to go back up to Pathways, and in 3D, we're going to look at Blender render. And I'm going to look at our slap comp, and let's check it out again. And before, all we saw was a library wall. Now we see it's the correct shot, and it's still named correctly. It's in the correct location with the correct naming. Okay, so let's hit save. Let's exit that one. So there is one slap comp done with our shot file updated. Let's go to the next one, and let's open up Blender files on sequence 1, shot 20. Again, we're going to pick Blender 4.4. And again, it looks like we're looking through the wall for the most part. And then at the very end, you can see our flute player. Okay, so we have a couple of things we're going to want to do. Again, we're just going to move out to the file and note that we're shooting through the library folder again. In this case, let's go ahead and find our library books, instance books, and right click and do our library override. And we know we're going to need to do it to the bookshelves as well. And right click and library override, make selected. Okay, so now we can go click here, click H to hide, click our bookshelves, H to hide, and click our general structure. Right click, library override. And the nice thing about doing these library overrides is when you update your central file and you update the links, these things will still remain hidden. You only have to do this once for every shot file. And that's the really efficient thing about the library override system, is you can make local changes to your shot files on a per shot basis and still update the top level file and have those changes ripple through. So let's go ahead and hide that piece, go back to our image plane, and let's see how this, go back and play the shot. Okay, so now we no longer have any 3D intersections. We're still going to want to clean up the key a little bit. To do that, let's go over to our shading. And again, remember this is a temporary key. We just want this for the slap comps. The actual production key will typically be handled elsewhere. So let's go and highlight our image plane, and I'm going to hit period to zoom in on this so we can actually see it clearly. Okay, here is our flute player, and let us fix the key. I'm going to use a couple of shortcuts that are part of Node Wrangler, and if you need to enable Node Wrangler, it's over in Preferences, Add-ons, type in Node Wrangler, and let's turn that on. There we go. It's a really useful set of shortcuts, as we're going to see. And so we've selected it's not our camera, we've actually selected our image plane. And so we can see the shader that is on the image plane. And this has a real-time keyer in it. We don't have quite the right color selected, so let's hit Control-Shift-Click on our image sequence that is coming in. And that is a sRGB image sequence that Autoshot automatically created earlier in the Proxies directory. And now that connects this node directly to our output, so we actually have the color of the green. So now we can actually click on our keyer color, pick our eyedropper, and let's see how that worked. I'm going to hit Control-Shift left mouse button on there and go back and reconnect our shader to this. And let's play through it, and let's see if our keyer is working better now. That looks a lot better there. It's looking pretty clean. All right, that is easily clean enough for a slap comp. All right, and that should do it. Okay, then we can hit save. We'll go to our layout view, make sure that we have the viewport locked to the camera by hitting the numpad 0 key. Or if you do not have a numpad, you're just going to go to view and cameras and active camera and view cameras and set this as the active camera. All right, and then we once again are going to hit N to pop open our Autoshot panel, and we're going to hit Fast Viewport Video. Again, you can see as it goes from the default, if you hit an image render with a traditional rendering, it would go correctly to the Blender render as an EXR file. We're doing something specific. We actually want a slap comp. We're just going to hit Fast Viewport Video, and it's going to come up and automatically set our output down here to our slap comp directory and to our slap comp file name in the MP4 file format. So it's going through very quickly and rendering our slap comp for us. And yeah, we'll have some keyer problems, but the focus on the slap comps is to get it all together so you can actually see how all the pieces are going to come together and if there's anything else that needs to get fixed. Great. So then we can check, save, exit out of our Blender file, and we can take a look at our newly generated slap comp. All right, and there is our slap comp with a clean key and a clean integration between the live action foreground plate and the CGI background library. And we'll just, for completion, we'll go through Papos 01, 030. Once again, we're going to go through and look at our slap comp first to see if anything is required due to this. There we go. In this case, our keyer needs some fixing and there's something in the background. So let's go ahead and, again, we're going to go back up to our 3D, our Blender files, and double click on this, go to Blender 4.4. All right, so we've got this, and we've got a object in the scene. Not quite sure where that came from. Okay, so let's go ahead and correct that, and we're going to do instance bookshelves and library override, and the process by now. Click on the offending object. We can show where it is in the hierarchy with a period. Icosphere, and we're just going to hide that. And let's see, look if there's anything else going wrong in here. Gonna look through the shot. Okay, so we need to fix the keyer. So let's go back over to shading and highlight our image plane. Zoom to that. Control-Shift to click on this to get the pure green screen. Set our keyer to a darker spot in the key. Check the key. And I'm just hitting space to play through the sequence. We can hit number pad 0 so we can actually look at it through the actual camera view. There we go. All right, that is a good shot. Okay, so now once again we are going to hit N and we are going to do our fast viewport video. So the basic idea here is that we can generate these slap comps very quickly, and these slap comps are actually the shot file for the actual sequence. Over time, these Blender files will be refined to incorporate updates to the 3D background files and additional pieces such as relit foreground files. But we have generated the actual production shot file for each individual shot. And so that way you can go through quite a large number of shots very quickly with this piece of automation.